Well, hopefully, by the time we've done this, we've spoken to Sean and we've put his stuff in. But if we haven't, hey, it's just us. So you went to the cinema and you managed to see C.S. Lewis some subtitle.
A most reluctant convert.
All right, cool. So this was in the cinema. Is there
Yes,
like
it
is
was. I think it's not had a general release. It was just one of those. It was only shown once on Sunday afternoon,
all right?
which and it was only one of the small screens. So I think they were like, and it's a Christian film.
What was it by any chance organized by a church?
I don't think the screening was. I think that it's across the country, but they were doing this one day across the country, across the cinemas all over the place,
All right,
just having this one showing on the Sunday afternoon. And it was like a double feature in that they did the making of the film and then you see the film.
all right. Oh, okay.
And it's based on a book based on a stage play.
Oh
And so
wow.
basically, you see C.S. Lewis narrating his own life. So you see an older C.S. Lewis looking back on his childhood, his youth, his experience in the First World War, and then his conversion to Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
and how for him that was like the pivotal moment in his life was
Yes.
his conversion to Christianity. That he had abandoned any sort of religious belief as a child when his mother died, and he spent his adolescence and his youth and into his 20s having no regard for religion other than no to regard to dismiss it basically.
Yeah.
And it was only when he was a fellow at Cambridge University, or was he Oxford? He was
Uh,
Oxford.
I can never remember. I think he was Oxford. I think Tolkien was Cambridge. Oh no no no
They were
no
both together.
no 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 no! It was Oxford. It was Oxford. They were both in Oxford. Yeah.
Yes. So it was only when basically he made friends with Tolkien and there was another scholar of a similar ilk who were both committed Christians that they um, basically convinced him of the rightness of what they believed, and he was became convinced himself. So it is the story of his basically his conversion to Christianity, and he described himself that there never was a more miserable reluctant convert in the history of Christianity, because intellectually he it was like almost like a case for Christ, but this
Yeah
was
yeah yeah
his own version of that, where he basically got to the point where he couldn't deny the gospel, and
yeah.
so he accepted it, but he said he was sweating and pacing and he was the most reluctant man ever to accept his fate,
Mm-hmm.
sort of in Christendom. And then when he did obviously embrace that Christianity, it literally did transform his life and his work, and it sort of fueled his sort of creativity because he wrote his the Narnia Chronicles
Yeah
and things like Mere Christianity that he wrote the
yeah.
Case for Boy,
Screw tape
um,
letters.
Tape Letters,
Yeah.
and there's his science fiction trilogy. So his creative output was entirely shaped by this conversion when he was just short of his 30, just before his 30s.
Oh, so okay, no, so Sharon, you and I are both Christians.
Yeah.
We both identify as that. I think that's a good parlance to use nowadays. We identify as Christians, and, and uh, but personally speaking, there's a certain type of Christian media output that I would look at and say that is just straight up propaganda.
Yeah.
that
You look at it
it
and you go, nope.
yeah, yeah. You look at that and you go, oh, for goodness sake, this is not going to make anybody even think that you're a reasonable person to talk to. It's just gonna be like it just comes across as yes, tub thumping and yes, look how great we are. Why aren't you believing what we believe? Where does this fall down? Does this fall down on the propaganda side of things, or on the this is a human being whose life we're telling?
In some ways, I think Christians will appreciate this film more than anyone outside of the faith, outside of the church.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it being a crossover film. It's quite dry,
Mm-hmm.
and it is almost that's what quite intellectual, the way C.S. Lewis was himself.
Yeah.
So I think most people who are fans of C.S. Lewis are probably from the church community. So, and the way it was presented was quite dry. It wasn't, even though it was like he was narrating his life and you see it sort of dramatically played out, it's still, you still, because you had that device of he was narrating it, he was like a spectator on those events.
Yeah.
So we too were a spectator on those events, and you didn't really feel drawn into them.
Oh
You
yeah.
were you were also like he was stood back watching these things, and so we were stood back watching these things. So the device to tell the story separated us from it to a certain degree. So I think I can't see this film appealing to like a mass audience. When I looked around, because we know the church communities around the place, even cross denominational, we know each other.
Yeah,
And looking around the church, I recognise people from other churches. So it really was like a Christian film for Christians. And I
yeah,
really would struggle to see, even though it was very well done, and it makes you think what a towering intellect C.S. Lewis had. He wasn't, when people say, oh, you have to be sort of slightly simple, or you have to be slightly naive, or you have to be slightly, intellectually lacking to embrace Christianity, because it sort of appeals to the different things in us. And
yeah,
you think, well, actually, you can't describe C.S. Lewis as any of those things, nor could you describe J.R.R. Tolkien as any of those things. These were intellectuals who are not just intelligent; had these
yeah.
strong, analytical, insightful intellects, and they, if they could have found any flaw in it, they would have done. And they would have abandoned it as like, I cannot countenance believing in something that's utter nonsense. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if you're putting your critical eye on, and the way you would look at this is, how many stars would you give it?
I would give it a 3, a solid 3. I couldn't say it was a strong 3. It was a solid 3, this one, because it appealed to me, because I quite like that sort of analytical looking at that sort of that dispassionate look at things sometimes.
Yeah.
But then it also made me realize that I wasn't emotionally connecting with the story.
Yeah.
So I would say it was 3. So
All
I found
right.
it really interesting, but not emotionally engaging.
All right. Cool. Good stuff. Right. We have one more thing to do, but we have about a minute left. So log on, log back on, log off, and log back on.
Yes.
All right. Cool. See you in a second.
Okay.
So